Let's delve into the transfer notebook and let's start with Bayern Munich, who are joining the race for Raphael Varan.
Yeah, this is one we floated actually on the All Access podcast last week when we said that maybe Real Madrid, who've also been linked, weren't the only team in Europe keeping tabs on Varan's situation. We know now that he's out of contract at the end of the season, having initially been told that he'd signed until 2025. It turned out it was 2024 with a year's option. We know there have been some issues between him and Erik Ten Hag over the course of the season, but can Manchester United really afford to let him go in this transfer window? I'm not entirely convinced.
Well, Erik Ten Hag said he didn't expect any activity in January or limited activity in January because I think he said he was happy with the squad that he's got. It was balanced, and when everyone was fit, he thought it was a very good squad. But he can't afford to lose Raphael Varan because there's too many injuries, there's too many suspensions to others. Lindelof's just had an operation. Lisandro Martinez hasn't hardly played at all this season because of the injury situation that he had with his foot, which has recurred.
Maguire not fit at this moment in time.
Maguire isn't fit at this moment in time. Both of them should be back by the middle of January, but there's not enough cover, so I don't think they can afford him to do, as long as everyone's happy. And I'm not sure that was always the case.
No, but he is playing now, Varan, so maybe that will put that issue to bed. And actually, financially, the upside is that you trim the wage bill for a few months if you allow him to go now, but you're not going to get much of a transfer fee because, of course, he can sign a pre-contract agreement with a European club from January anyway. So I would expect him to stay, but it's one just maybe to keep an eye on.
Manchester City closing in on another Argentine wonderkid.
Yes, indeed. Following a similar path to that of Julian Alvarez, it's going to be a deal worth around £22 million. It's a 17-year-old midfielder, Claudio Echeverri. He's an Argentine under-17 international, did very well at the under-17 World Cup. Chelsea have had a look at him, so too have Barcelona, but looks like City will win that race, and the plan I think will be that he stays on loan at River Plate, certainly until the end of the season, maybe until the end of the next year, and then joins out with Pep Guardiola's side.
Talking of Pep Guardiola, he looks as if he's going to allow Calvin Phillips to go to Newcastle on loan. I think they've moved into pole position, but Calvin Phillips has got to make sure that he's fully up to speed, ready to go if he wants to play in an Eddie Howe team. Yeah,
I think this is a move that suits Calvin Phillips. We know there's been contact from Juventus as well, but perhaps they're now focusing their sights elsewhere. We'll talk about that in a moment. But for Calvin Phillips, I think it suits him to stay in the Premier League, probably geographically suits his family life as well to go up to Newcastle. But you're right, he's going to need to prove that he's fully fit and has been putting a shift in training because Eddie Howe has very high standards in that department. Manchester City are open to offers. They're open to allowing Calvin Phillips to leave. I think if it's Newcastle, it would have to be a loan deal because we know, as Luke Edwards told us yesterday, they're treading a fine line with FFP restrictions, so it'll be a loan fee until the end of the season, maybe with the option of a permanent deal. But that would rule them out signing any other player on loan from the Premier League because you're only allowed 2 domestic loans, and they've already got Lewis Hall on loan from Chelsea.
Yeah, domestic loans, but they'll be able to loan players from other places.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Saudi Arabia if they needed to bring someone in. You never know. But they do need to get some reinforcements into that squad. And Calvin Phillips, I think, not only does Newcastle suit him in terms of geography, but if you're Calvin Phillips and you've got to start playing football again, you need to make sure that you're in a team regularly to attract the attention and to satisfy the requirements of the England manager going into a European Championship year. The risk you take of going to Serie A when you don't speak the language, culture's completely different for you, and it's a completely new league, a new team, new language. There's too many variables to try to get to grips with in a short space of time because he hasn't got a load of time to settle and to get playing. He's got to hit the ground running. Wherever he goes, Calvin Phillips needs to be playing week in, week out. So I think it's more of a risk to go abroad at this stage where you're uncertain about too many other factors. Whereas at least if you go into Newcastle, he knows if he's fit and firing and ready to play, he'll be able to seamlessly slip into that league. It won't be completely alien environment to him.
And there's still a top side who will see themselves competing at least for a European place, if maybe not a top 4 place in the second half of the season. I think you'll look around at what Eddie Howe has done for players who maybe were at a low ebb when he came in, the likes of Joe Linton for one, maybe even Fabian Schär. And he'll think maybe Eddie Howe is somebody who can help me revive my career because that move to Man City has been a disaster, isn't it? There's no way of sugarcoating it. He's played 89 minutes
on the field
in the Premier League this season. He's won 5 trophies.
I was going to say, he's won 5 trophies and he's got a very healthy bank balance, so disaster's probably a little bit overplaying it. Juventus are stepping up their interest in Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. You mentioned that. And you also said to me off air, I don't understand why Tottenham would let him go. But something that Ange Postecoglou said when he sort of almost froze him out at the beginning of the season was, look, I was brought in to instigate change, and if you keep doing the same things over and over again, then nothing is going to change. He's already spoken, and we've heard him speak about on this programme, the idea of getting fresher players, new players in the early part of the January transfer window. I wouldn't be surprised if that's an area of the field that they bolstered the squad in. Plus, you've got Bentancur to come back. Yeah,
I'm expecting Tottenham to be one of the busier clubs in January, actually, both in terms of incomings and outgoings. And to be fair, my sources have made it pretty clear to me since last summer that Pierre-Emile Højbjerg is a player long-term. He doesn't really have a future under Postecoglou, maybe not dynamic enough to play the type of football that he wants to. Same can be said of Eric Dyer. I think will leave, if not this window, then certainly in the summer. Maybe a return to Sporting Lisbon for him could be on the cards. You forget Hugo Lloris is still on their books as well, and I would expect him to go in this transfer window. And then in terms of incomings, we know there have been talks with Nice for Jean-Claire Todibo. Keep an eye on Lloyd Kelly at Bournemouth, whose contract is coming to an end at the moment. He hasn't shown any great desire to sign a new deal. And I think probably they might need to sign a forward as well, because you mentioned it earlier that Son is going away to the Asia Cup. It's asking a lot of Richarlison solely, really, to take on that goal-scoring burden. So I think it's going to be a relatively quiet transfer window by recent standards, but I think Tottenham, in terms of what they're going to do, I think they're going to be very active.
Sasa Kalajdzic is on the move as well. Wolves have told him he can leave on loan.
Yeah, no surprise really. He scored a big goal, I seem to recall, for Gary O'Neill early in the season, but hasn't been given
Everton,
much of a look in since. It doesn't seem to really suit O'Neill's playing standards. I mean, that has been a disaster move for him, because he got a serious injury very early after completing the transfer and hasn't been able to force his way back into the team since. A lot of clubs in Germany are looking at him, and I think if Kalajdzic does go, then Wolves may look into the market themselves. I think they were close to signing somebody from Germany themselves, but I was told this morning that probably won't happen now. Maybe Shea Adams, who was on their radar in the summer, could come back into their thinking.
Interesting. He's the only bloke I know that's bigger than you, Sasa Kalajdzic.
What is he, 6'7"?
Yeah, biggest player, I think, in the league by about 2 centimetres.
Good stat.
Yeah, he's bigger than Dan Burn. Yeah. You didn't know that, did you? Yeah, I whispered in my ear there. What about Dan Burn? Yeah, no, he's bigger than Dan Burn. Crazy.
He doesn't get the big attached to him, does he? You can't say Dan Burn without calling him Big Dan Burn. We don't really call him Big Sasa Kalajdzic.
He's got enough syllables in there already, isn't he?
Very
Sizable
true.
Sasa.